Is it time for Americans to brace for recession? In just the last week and a half, we've been treated to a bigger than usual interest rate hike, massive asset price drops, news of negative GDP, continued hot inflation, and one of the world's most storied investment banks revising an earlier projection to say it now anticipates a major recession in 2023. Inflation is the principal economic illness Americans have been suffering from for the past year. But could the proposed cure for inflation make them suffer even more? Soaring prices have been the dominant economic story for the past year, and with good reason. After being absent for more than a decade, inflation roared back onto the American landscape last April and has been challenging consumers and savers ever since. At the time of this video, the Consumer Price Index is at 8.3%. That's the fastest year-over-year increase since December 1981. But is another dreaded economic condition about to push inflation from the headlines? It seems in the relative blink of an eye, recession has gone from possibility to probability in the opinion of experts. Deutsche Bank just predicted a major recession weeks after forecasting a mild one. The Global Investment Bank has become so concerned over what it sees in the inflation front that it published a new report titled, "Why the Coming Recession Will Be Worse Than Expected." Deutsche says, quote, "We think the risks are skewed toward a much more significant recession as inflation proves more persistent than is generally expected." Inflation by itself can cause a slowdown in the nation's economic engine as soaring prices force consumers to curb spending. But inflation's built-in potential as a recession trigger comes from the heavy, clumsy tool, and only tool the central banks have to tame it: interest rate hikes. Of the previous 11 rate tightening cycles, 8 have ended in recession. In its report, Deutsche says the interest rate hikes needed to finally bring inflation to its knees will push the U.S. economy into a significant recession by late 2023, with unemployment ultimately rising several percentage points. As we found in the 1970s and 1980s, this will be tough, but the only way to minimize the economic, financial, and societal damage of prolonged inflation is to err on the side of doing too much. Astute retirement savers have likely focused on how they could mitigate the effects of high inflation we've seen for the past year. With everything going on right now, they might want to give as much consideration to how they could minimize the impact of possible recession. That's why I invite you to join a one-on-one web conference with me and my education team at AugustaPreciousMetals.com/webconference.
Hey guys, Joe Montana here with my man Devlyn Steele. He and his team at Augusta Precious Metals are constantly putting out new information to keep you ahead of the game. Click subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay up to date. You'll be glad you did.